Well, one of the many things that Adornos has been quoting for years now has been a very powerful statement, which is reality is by interpretation. Now, when I'm working with people one-on-one, when I'm helping them with achieving their own psychic development, when I'm helping them to become proficient healers, when I'm helping them to become Akashic readers, anything that really represents the state of an advanced perception, this rule applies. And the rule itself is paradox. So we have reality equals interpretation. Now, throughout the years, many people that have communicated with me and that I've worked with have had certain censorships. So here's been their censors. And censorship basically represents the idea of wavy clouds, distortion, white noise in that example. So some people, for example, may not like the word divine. Oh boy, you know, I've seen that word kind of fall into different places. Some people think that this may be divine, when in fact, from my own perception, what they're doing is not divine at all. And so I think I'm going to stop using this word altogether, because divine just doesn't fit in my agenda anymore. It just doesn't fit in my definitions anymore. Alright, that's your choice. But should it really be blamed on the word? If we're looking at other things like desire. Well, that may have ego assigned to it. Maybe there's an ego purpose if you're very desirable. Maybe if you feel that everything that represents desire will make you, more of a ego, self-centered kind of individual. And so I'm going to exclude that word from my vocabulary altogether, because I don't want to feel desire. Alright? And it can be so many other things. Some people may even think that spirituality may be a bad word. People misrepresent it so much. It's so misrepresented to the idea of what it's supposed to be. So I'm going to just exclude spirituality from my comprehension. So let's get rid of these. And we bring ourselves back to one particular focus. The focus that represents the cloudiness, the fog, the waves, the white noise. Reality is by interpretation. There are no bad words. There are no bad definitions. Every single person that has created a definition with their own word, their own idea of a censorship, is their own. It's not yours. Their own idea of reality is their own. It's not yours. It doesn't matter who said it. It doesn't matter whose perspective may feel, quote-unquote, more warranted. Those particular definitions of spirituality, of desire, etc., are their own interpretations of how they consider to be their own truth. So, why don't we just open up the way of complete and total expression? And this moves into the law of one. Everything is valid. Everything is perspective, as it all represents branches from creation. That the original one thought catapulted, branched out, funneled, rooted out all of these states of expression. And that when we bring back these roots of expression back to the one thought, back to the oneness of the Creator, the one infinite Creator, the creation, the universe, source, you return back into the aspect of the law of one. Whenever a perspective becomes censored, it becomes distortion. Now, you may choose not to look at that perspective as something as yourself. Alright, well, this person sees their life unfolding in this way, and this is the definitions that they have termed in regards to their own state of being. That's fantastic. I send my love to that individual. I appreciate and I acknowledge everything that that individual has done, regardless of whether it's positive or negative, because that represents distortion in itself, because you're only looking at halves. You're only looking at black and white. So if reality is by interpretation, all interpretations are valid. All perspectives of reality are valid. So there is no good or bad definitions in regards to a generic state of understanding. There's only our own subjective perceptions. And that our subjective perceptions, through interpretation, will determine our own personal alignment of how we decide to live. And that we're looking back at the law of one. And that through any particular type of conditioning, that would contradict aspects of expression, aspects of perspective, of looking into the idea of how we perceive reality to be, birthed from the original one thought. That's the key here, is to look at that perspective, and that anything stands in the way of that perspective to be labeled, to be dogmified, so to speak, to be conditioned, represents distortion of the law of one. And so it's really, really important that however you want to live your life, however you have created your upbringing, however you have allowed your educational factors to come in effect, is to respect your own interpretations. Reality is by interpretation. You are the one that is bringing forward your own definitions. If spirituality really brings forward a strong connection with you, use it. If you feel desire is your own way of passion, that you're feeling that your desire is connecting you to all of these profound states, and you're walking this path where all these avenues of authenticity is coming through a connection of desire, go for it. It doesn't have to compute with somebody else. Someone may literally come up to you and say, oh my God, you're using desire, ego-based, my God, you maniac. That's alright, because that's their conditioning. They have been conditioned through censorship of feeling that don't go with desire. Desire represents ego. It can, and then it cannot. That's the whole idea. This is where we're kind of looking at a particular shape that really brings perspective relating to the validity of all perceptions, of all definitions, of all comprehensions. So right here we have a circle, right? And this may be the negative circle. This may be the circle of darkness. And one person's perspective of all their definitions of what they would consider to be evil, negative, misaligned, imbalanced, etc., are all contained here. This is their archive of the negative. However, there is also the circle of the positive, which represents all of their fundamental achievements, their aspects of happiness, etc., etc. Now, as long as we continue to see life like this, it will be distortion of the law of one. Separation is the greatest distortion contained within the law of one. And if you really want to amalgamate yourself these two circles need to be bonded. It is not about eradication, it's about amalgamation. And so, you're creating the vesica piscis. You're bringing the two circles together. So whenever I have a person that feels that they've looked at a person's perspective, another individual's perspective, and they say, oh, well, this person's wrong, and they're doing all this stuff, and this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And I basically just say, well, look into the aspect of what they've labeled as what they consider to be their positive to then become your negative. Does it always warrant to the point where you need to impose what you feel is your positive over their negative? It's not your work, it's not your job, it's not what you're meant to do. You may not agree with a lot of what they may consider to be their positive notion. For example, I don't really agree with a lot of religious leaders, religious prophets, that feel that there needs to be life or conditioning of life in these particular ways. I'm definitely not in resonance, but I'm not going to ignore the aspect that this is what they have considered to be their positive alignment. To understand that this is their way, this is how they work, this is how they create their action and their impulse. I don't agree with that, but I acknowledge it. All right, I acknowledge that they are contained with what they feel right now is positive. Now, I'm always willing to share my perspective as well too, but I'm never going to enforce it upon anybody. I'm not going to belittle someone just because their positivity, their aspects of their own actions are different than mine. I may feel that they are still going through a large learning process, as am I. But it's not about feeling that you need to belittle them, that you need to throw the mighty judge and hammer at them. That's what you consider positive energy? That's what you consider to be a positive approach to transforming humanity? You're dreaming, you're delusional, you're crazy, etc., etc. And it's no different than how many of us who have moved into a spiritual movement, an enlightening movement, an illuminated movement, whatever you want to call it, your own spiritual awakening, have been judged by others. A feeling, you know, you're believing this one infinite creator, connecting with your higher self, communicating with spirit guides, developing your psychic ability, becoming a healer. You're crazy. You're nuts. This is all bonkers. This is all insanity. Come back to reality. And that plays the game of judgment upon itself. So if we really want to move past the level of distortion, the key begins with, again, acknowledge. Acknowledge that these aspects of other people exist. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to integrate them into your life. But you're integrating other aspects of them into your life that represents a perspective that you have now understood. The acknowledgement becomes the personal integration. It's not the integration in regards to their beliefs of what they feel positive energy is. It's not about the integration of their negative beliefs of what integration may be. But the integration is acknowledgement. It's understanding that this is how they have perceived the branches, the roots of the one original thought. And that's how they decide to bring their life forward. That's showing respect to the law of one. That's connecting. When you see the spark, the spirit of every single person around you, and you respect and acknowledge all that they consider to be valid within their reality based on their perceptions and their definitions, that's seeing the law of one within them. When you see it through yourself, that you're not hiding behind a mask, that you're not putting on all of these camouflages, and you're being genuine to yourself of what definitions have validated yourself, and not feeling that you're throwing that at anybody else. You have to see things in my definition. You're being true, pure, and authentic to yourself. That is being part of the law of one. When you see creation in all things, divinity in all things, and rather than playing the positive and the negative game, understand the cycle. Understand how they are constantly looping back in paradox because they're attempting to show you the wholeness. The negative of what you consider to be the negative was part of the branch from the one original thought. What you would consider to be positive was a branch from the one original thought. There is no positive and negative. It's distortion. It moves into the point that you're playing with these hemispheres until you're catapulted back into a state of understanding balance, of understanding how they truly complete one another. One cannot be without the other. You need your darkness, you need your light. They come together. They are the hemispheres of totality, of entirety, of wholeness within yourself. So this is the whole idea of looking into reality is by interpretation, which is a direct formula for the law of one. So just take that into consideration. You're developing your connection with expanded awareness. You're becoming a proficient healer. Whatever it may be, understand your reality is by your interpretation, and that all realities are by all interpretation, and that this is the formula for the law of one. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Brad Johnson. If you do have any questions relating to this video, you can email me at info@consciousmatrix.com. Also feel free to go to consciousmatrix.com for one-on-one sessions helping you with developing your psychic ability, developing your healing ability, developing your expanded awareness, all kinds of great stuff. Feel free to check out consciousmatrix.com. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will speak to you next time. Much love, namaste, and may it be well with you. Goodbye for now.